be on cocaine to be on this podcast? Cocaine. Cocaine, really? Cocaine. Cocaine, really?
What's up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, the good, not the good chef, but the good Fireball Matt Marchesini. Matt, how was your journey to Manhattan, to and from, to enjoy the KU game, in addition to the TCU matchup for the women's basketball team? Oh, son of a freaking biscuit. Okay, go ahead.
I hope everybody just is aware of the past 5 minutes how much of a struggle it's been to start the recording for this show that you're listening to right now. No, it was a fun week in Manhattan. Obviously, starting with the women's game on Wednesday, which was an extremely fun game from start. Well, I'm not going to say from the start, but from the second quarter on. And
definitely
then
not in the start of the fourth quarter when it was like an 8-0 run. Yeah, bad, very bad.
When you have a first quarter that's 8-8, that's a little bit of a struggle to watch. But then you go into Saturday where the men really dominated from I can't say start to finish, but for 30 minutes straight in that game, I feel like the K-State dominated in many facets of the game of basketball. So Saturday, obviously very fun. It's always fun to beat your rival. This is one of the KU games that we haven't seen in a long time where K-State's won, but the game really didn't seem that close, for most of it. So I don't know. It was fun and kind of great to see where the men's team's going right now and what they could bring on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun thing to watch as we go along. But before we get into the episode, this Topo Chico crack is brought to you by Annie Mae's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Annie Mae's has been in business for 50 plus years and is an absolute must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. Matt, you got to go. You got to visit your auntie. You were back. You're back in town.
Did.
How was would you like to enlighten our viewers on your experience? And I think Boot Hill Jazz Night was happening while you were there, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Well, I got there just a little before Boot Hill Jazz Night. The guy that I was with had to get back to his wife. Had to have an early night, so we couldn't stay for jazz. But got to meet Jeff, the owner of Annie Mae's. Jeff's an avid supporter of Cocaine Willie in the pod, and vice versa. I am an avid supporter of Annie Mae's. I enjoyed my old fashioned that I got there on Friday night, and excited, to continue our partnership with Annie Mae's, one of the best bars in Aggieville by far.
Absolutely. They've got events. They've got everything, comedy, live music, all sorts of other stuff going on there. They've got Trivia Smackdown happening on Wednesday, February 12th. You've got Pie and Cocktails with Therapy on Tuesday, February 11th. And then the Underground Guitar Pull featuring Bella Blackheart, Nirvana, Hope, and Jacob Smith is happening on February 13th at 8 p.m. Might as well plug the last one, too. We've got, I think... Is this bad? No, it's not Bad Movie Night. You've got High Octane Bluegrass, The Drifters Mile, February 15th at 8 p.m. It's a free show at the Parlor, so be sure to check that out. Like I said, events, all sorts of stuff, craft cocktails like the old fashioned that Matt had, draft beer, everything in between. Go visit your auntie again at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville. So tonight, what we're going to chat through, just quick hitter episode. We've already talked a little bit about the men's basketball team, but we want to kick this off with football news. So over the last week, came out, I think on Thursday or Friday of last week, Conor Riley is departing the program to be the offensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys, which is not something I really thought I would have on my bingo card for this offseason, especially not this late in the coaching carousel cycle. But the fortunate news, I think, and the headliner to go along with this is Matt Wells has been promoted from co-offensive coordinator to, I guess, solitary offensive coordinator and the primary play caller, along with his quarterback coaching duties, which he had from the previous season already anyway. But I think the foresight for Kleiman to bring in a guy to be co-offensive coordinator, not only to, I think at the time, probably help out Conor Riley to up-level his ability as a first-time play caller, but also as a contingency plan, for lack of a better way to put it. I think the foresight was definitely there by Kleiman and company. But I guess to start it off with the Conor Riley news, what were your thoughts when that news came out and the Pete Thamel tweet came out about Conor Riley going to the Dallas Cowboys, and what were you thinking would be the move after that? Do you think Matt Wells would be a shoo-in? Do you think we would maybe kind of look outside the program for at least a brief second there?
Obviously, I think to start with, I was very surprised with the news. The thing with Conor Riley is you look at his time even before he was an offensive coordinator, he's been looked at as an extremely strong assistant coach on our staff. I mean, he's done an excellent job of getting offensive linemen ready to play in the NFL. Everybody will talk about Cooper Beebe and what he's done, but he's proven to be extremely successful in the college game and getting offensive linemen ready to go. For him to move to the NFL is very surprising. Not that he took the job, because let's be honest, if you're a college coordinator and you get offered a positional coach job in the NFL at, no matter how bad the Dallas Cowboys are, they're still the Dallas Cowboys. You're going to take that job no matter what. And so I think, for our fan base, there's nothing we can do other than congratulate Conor Riley, for this opportunity. It's huge. I'm sure Chris Kleiman was, you look at the timing of it, where it is and kind of right before spring ball, et cetera. You could, you may not necessarily enjoy that, but I'm sure Chris Kleiman was extremely complimentary, of the move to have one of your coaches go to the NFL like that. I mean, it shows the ability to develop your staff and get, your staff into a role like that. So obviously a great move for Conor. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do, with the offensive line of the Dallas Cowboys. They need a lot more than Conor Riley. I'll say that. But the other part of it is with Matt Wells. I mean, you're not necessarily bringing in Matt Wells last year thinking that Conor Riley is going to leave. But it makes things a hell of a lot easier to have a guy who is already plugged into the offense, already been working with Avery Johnson, all of your quarterbacks extremely, heavily through the year last year. And so it's going to, is there going to be a transition? Who knows? A lot of people talked at the end of last season if, Matt Wells was doing a little bit of play calling. I never bought into any of that. I always felt that Conor Riley was the one, with the reins of the offense, or at least calling the plays of the offense. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a difference there. But, are there some nuances that Matt Wells is going to be able to bring into the equation that, maybe Conor Riley, not to say he wasn't a fan with, maybe just, some different style, that Matt Wells is going to be able to bring in. I'm sure he, sees the development of Avery Johnson and knows the things that he has to put together, to have an excellent junior campaign. But now Matt Wells is going to be, steering the bus, so to speak. And so I'm excited to see just how he gets and kind of takes control of the offense and, what kind of style he brings. Everybody's talked about, when he was at Utah State and how he developed Jordan Love. Now you aren't just the quarterback coach, but you're getting your quarterback in a position where now you can control, the plays that your quarterback's going to be running. So truly, I think for Avery Johnson's development, it's going to be exciting, to kind of see what situation, Matt Wells is going to put him in. I'm also interested to see from an assistant coach perspective who's going to take over for, the offensive line, and just kind of where, do we develop internally there, or do we bring in somebody from the outside for some of these pieces too? But I'm excited. I think everybody can probably agree, Conor Riley was a little of a polarizing kind of figure, especially with some of, the issues that we saw with the offense through the season. I don't necessarily solely blame that on Conor Riley. So, and I don't think that's fair to do so. But I think it's fair that we can be excited for maybe a little bit of just a different mindset that's now at the reins of the offense. And, just kind of seeing where it goes from here.
That's just the nature of being an offensive coordinator, though. At the same time, you're always going to be the lightning rod for criticism if things aren't going right. Yep. And we had that stretch of games, with the exception of Cincinnati, in November timeframe, where you lost some games and some of the play calling did look just maybe not great or not what you would have expected to see. But also, how much of that is play calling versus execution is another whole debate that you can get into. But all the best to Conor Riley. I think about this in real world terms in a lot of ways of, if you're developing guys who move on to bigger and better things at the next level, that is a huge badge of honor that you should be taking on as a coaching staff and as a program, to know that you can develop guys not only to get drafted in the NFL, but you can develop coaches to get from, running game coordinator and offensive line coach at the Big 12 level in Power 4 college football to, the Dallas Cowboys are calling you up to be your next guy. I mean, that says a lot about Kleiman and how he's respected in coaching circles, I think, to be able to develop those kinds of guys. And it also speaks to, Matt Wells wouldn't have come in if he didn't have that respect for Kleiman and his ability to get guys back to, if you're Wells, you probably want to be the OC here for a couple of years and then get back to a head coaching job at the Power 4 level again, which
sure.
This is that stepping stone for him to be able to do that again in the future. So, if I have someone on my team at work that I am managing and he or she ends up getting promoted to a manager level at a different company and gets the bag, go for it. I mean, I would be remiss not to, be excited for that person if it's me and the shoes on the other foot. So yeah, I'm excited about Matt Wells, though. I think it's going to be interesting. It's a guy whose offensive play calling style definitely is not of the scheme that we kind of traditionally think of when we think of Kleiman, right? He comes from more of the Utah State, the schemes and stuff he ran with Jordan Love, the schemes he ran with, Henry Columbia and some of those guys at Texas Tech, very different from what we're used to. So I guess you mentioned maybe transition. Is there going to be any kind of transition? If you're just doing kind of a gut check here, how much do you think the offensive scheme is going to shift in this first year? Or do you think it's going to shift at all? Do you think they're going to try to keep it more simplistic, like they said they were going to do a number of times last year, to try to keep it, relatively simple for these guys running the offense?
A part of me thinks it won't change a ton. K-State, historically, even without Conor Riley, you think about, the strength in the offensive line, running the football, and, trying to create a dual option, to where if you have a great running back, you will allow your running back the opportunity to get their time. But on the flip side, you have a guy in Avery Johnson who, has shown these flashes of talent. Obviously was a single season passing touchdown leader last year, record holder now after last year's season. This isn't going to turn into an air raid by any means. And that's why I don't think there's going to be a huge transition. I feel like the play calling and the system is going to be relatively similar. But I also think Matt Wells is going to be understanding of the talent that he has and look for the strengths and opportunities to where you can modify the playbook a little bit to get the ball in the hands of the people who you believe are the ones with the most talent on this team. So if it means that we're going to run the rock 35 times a game, I'm sure Matt Wells is going to accommodate for that. He in who he believes, is going to allow this team to win games. But at the end of the day, you have a guy in Avery Johnson who you imagine is going to develop even more, get better from a sophomore to junior season. And so it's, if it's going to be getting opportunities, for him in the run game, getting some opportunities, obviously, to Jace Brown and some of our new, talent that we have, Lincoln Cure, tight ends. I mean, I think it's going to be in that realm, but the system is not going to completely switch, and that's the nice part. And in a way, the convenient part that Matt Wells, came over last season. Yeah, you're not anticipating, Conor Riley is going to be leaving, but in the grand scheme of things, there is no need to reinvent the wheel, especially right before spring practice. So that's why I think there will be maybe a few nuances that might change, just, on Matt Wells' philosophy, as an offensive coach, but it's not necessarily beneficial to just completely flip the script, especially right before spring practice, and knowing that Avery Johnson, this is going to be your third offensive coordinator, so to speak, that you've had in the 3 seasons that you've been at K-State. This one, it's fair to say, Conor Riley was the play caller, so you could probably say this is your third play caller that you've had in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel there's necessarily a need to just completely, change. So it will be very interesting to see how, what we hear, from spring practice and whatnot about Matt Wells, how he's kind of leading this, and, we'll just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, that and then talking backfill, you've got a couple of guys who have been talked about a little bit already in the existing staff of guys that could potentially take that offensive line role. You've got Drew Little, who was brought in. I believe he returned in 2024 for his 7th year on staff. He's assistant director of recruiting, offensive quality control, former offensive lineman and offensive line coach in his own right, was at ACU during the 2021 season, Abilene Christian, my wife's alma mater, fun fact, for those of you who don't know that. But that offensive line was ranked number 19 nationally when he was the offensive line coach at ACU, which is an interesting tidbit. So you've got a couple of guys in him, and then Brian LePack is another name. He's currently tight ends coach, but also, I mean, he's just one of the smartest guys in college football right now. So he's a guy, he's going to be loyal to this program. It's going to be fascinating to see if one of those two guys maybe gets promoted to that offensive line coach role, or if they try to go outside and who they potentially would hire outside of the program. If one of those two guys does end up being the backfill for Conor Riley in the offensive line capacity specifically, but definitely losing tremendous talent in Conor Riley. I am excited about the future with Matt Wells regardless. And let's pivot over real quick to men's basketball. So wins, riding that win streak, 5 in a row now. You've got wins against Arizona State and KU. I guess first off, what was the environment like in Bramlage for the KU matchup? Because Beasley was in the house, Barry Brown was there, Tyler Perry was leading some chants, I hear.
Yeah, I got asked this a couple times this weekend. I told people it was like an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
And the reason I think is pretty straightforward, kind of what I said before. There weren't many times in this game where I felt that K-State wasn't controlling the game. There were a couple times where you get a little bit antsy. You're expecting the typical KU run. But K-State just, if KU would go on a 5-0 little mini run, K-State always came back and made a shot, and made some type of big shot. And so I give it an 8.5 just because it had this kind of consistent energy through the arena during the game. And, especially as you get late in the second half and K-State went on a run, KU calls a timeout, you have sandstorm and all of that type of stuff. Past KU K-State games, the environment is fun. for good portions of the game, but then when KU goes on the run, it just dies, it dies. And so you make it up kind of on the back end. I felt there was a consistent energy in the arena on Saturday, which, kind of gave me my ranking. I would be interested, like guy like Scott Wildcat, I saw at the game, what his thoughts would be on, kind of his historical KU K-State, feelings in the arena from 1 to 10. But it was fun. It was great to have Michael Beasley there. The news notwithstanding from yesterday, he's obviously such an important historical figure for our basketball program. And, with him playing professionally, you don't get a lot of opportunities to come back to your alma mater. And I'm really glad that university, Wildcat NIL, all these different groups, were able to get him into the arena for a game. And especially a game like this. And it looked like he was having a great time on court side, especially with Barry Brown. It was great to have Barry back. One of the things that I think from a K-State basketball program perspective is, we have a lot of guys who have done really great things to our program that obviously are still playing professionally somewhere. And you don't get chances to bring them in because they're making money overseas or, making money in the NBA. But it's important for the program. And I wholeheartedly believe Jerome Tang understands this, that, these guys who have played such an important part, the first opportunity that we can get, some of these players back in this arena because they're done playing or, it doesn't, meets a break or something like that. I feel like he's going to be the number one guy to push for it. So, Jacob Pullen is obviously, one of the next ones that, you would expect, but he's obviously shown up, last year for a game. And so it's great to have those guys come in, and it's great for the team to perform when those guys are here. And it just brings additional energy to already kind of hostile environment in general. I think the crowd definitely played an important factor in the game, but this was also a game where I feel like the team, the crowd was important for our team, but our team played extremely well, against a KU team who defensively, I mean, they're a top 5, adjusted defensive team in the country. Like this is a very good defensive team, and K-State was kind of, I don't know if shredding is the right word, but they were really smart with their offense and getting opportunities for high percentage shots, especially inside the paint. So I just thought the offensive game plan here was so good for a good majority of that game.
Yeah. This is the only KU game that I can really think of where, I mean, maybe I think I heard someone talking about 2011, maybe, but this is the first KU game that I can think of, at least in my memory, where you led pretty much wire to wire, 37 minutes of game time where you led KU in that matchup. And there really wasn't a doubt, to your point, when they would go on a 4 or 5 point run, there's always an answer. There was always that continued desire and will to keep them at arm's length, and they successfully staved them off. It was great. And the Arizona State game, that was a lot sloppier looking game, but that was also kind of a little bit of a letdown look ahead spot, a little bit coming off of the emotional win against Iowa State, going into an emotional game against your other biggest rival in men's basketball. So I think, Arizona State was not exactly the cleanest game. You came out on top. You did what you needed to do to get it done. And we head into a matchup against a number 13 Arizona team that, shameless plug, there will be a watch along tomorrow night. So I will not be here, which is why I kind of wanted to get an episode going so I could get my thoughts out there on some of this stuff. But I'm going to be unavailable. So Matt and the good chef will be recording a watch along tomorrow night, as we're recording this Monday night, for the 7 o'clock Central Time tip off against the Arizona Wildcats, who are 13th in the country. But this is a damn good Arizona team. I know it didn't really look like it during non-conference, but they are currently tied for the lead in the Big 12 with Houston, who I think they face Saturday. So they're going to have a quick turnaround against what could be probably the biggest matchup they're going to have all year, just based on how those two teams are playing at this point in the season. And they're coming off of an emotional win. So it's going to be a kind of a letdown look ahead spot for them too. So will they sleepwalk into this matchup in Manhattan, or do you think we're going to get the Arizona team that everybody's been getting through conference play this season?
Well, Arizona is a very interesting team because they're a weird team. In a way, their trajectory had similarities to K-State, but Arizona flipped the switch earlier in Big 12 play.
Yeah.
Basically at Big 12 play. I mean, they're non-conference. If we think about Arizona and their schedule and the teams that they lost to, like higher conference teams, but lose out Wisconsin by like 25 points, lose to Duke at home, lost to Oklahoma, lost to West Virginia, all at the Atlantis.
And Oklahoma hasn't done jack shit in SEC play either.
Oklahoma had a great start to the year, and then they've just completely tanked. This team lost to UCLA at home. But then you look from a Big 12 play perspective, their only loss was at Texas Tech. They lost by 16.
Which has aged very well.
Texas Tech, obviously, they're number one team in the conference right now.
Yeah.
But, their trajectory, especially early on in Big 12 play, was similar. Beat a ranked Cincinnati team. They beat a ranked West Virginia team. Obviously beat Iowa State in that great thriller a week ago. So Arizona is they are on a hot streak, just like K-State. And a lot of it, you could talk about a guy like Caleb Love, who he's a guy who has the hottest of hots in games, or, he will shoot 2 of 15. It's very interesting, just kind of how this team, and kind of runs on him, but they've developed, they've got some really good players on this team, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. Arizona averages 82 points a game, to K-State's 73. I mean, this is going to be a team that's going to want to come in and make shots. They're going to want to come in and, start off strong. Think about some of these, not just losses, but wins that K-State has had where K-State starts slow. The KU game was not like that, but Arizona State game, Iowa State game, 2 games where K-State starts off terribly in those games and has to come back and, somehow in the middle of the game, get on a run. You cannot let Arizona do that, especially at your home arena. Can't let Caleb Love, start, getting hot from 3 and just et cetera, et cetera. I'm nervous about this game. I'm more nervous about this game than I was the KU game.
I agree.
I think just because of how good Arizona has been. I also think from a K-State perspective, like the importance of this game now is like magnified 100 times, because you look at the back end of the schedule for K-State, like this game,
two top 15 matchups. But those are the only two teams.
Those are the only ones. And especially with a 2-game road trip after this Arizona game, you lose the Arizona game. It's quite possible that you go on the road to BYU, you go on the road to Utah, and go 0-2. And then your dreams of an NCAA tournament are completely dashed unless you win the Big 12 tournament. Right. But you beat an Arizona team at home, you have more leeway towards the back end of your season where you're playing, teams that aren't necessarily super strong. You get Arizona State at home, you get Colorado at home. You're going to go on the road to UCF, which UCF has shown some high moments this year, but they've kind of hit a few roadblocks here recently. Cincinnati obviously has not been super great. But they did just beat BYU at home this past weekend. The back half of this schedule has been super attainable for K-State. This game, though, I really feel if you're going to make the NCAA tournament, you're thinking about the Iowa State game to end the year, but this is, I really think like the one, especially with KU, not looking super hot at the moment. You want them to continue being in the top 25, but I'm nervous about this one because of all the highs that K-State has had, and admittingly, all the analytics say K-State looks like one of the top teams in the country right now.
Yeah.
And admittingly, from the eye test and the games that we've seen, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But Arizona is one of the hottest teams in the conference right now. And so it's nerve-wracking because of how good this win could be perceived if K-State was able to win this at home. It really changes the dynamic and of looking at the back end of the schedule and thinking K-State could make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
With there's 8 games left, 6-2.
That's exactly what I posted on, because I'm not on Twitter right now. I'm doing Blue Sky. So I had a skeet on Saturday after the KU win that said that's what they call them, skeets. Yeah, Blue Sky, Sky Tweets. Skeets.
You got to rename that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Not great name. But I had a skeet on Saturday that I said, realistically, if K-State goes 6-2, you're gonna finish out conference play. 12-8, I think is what that would mean, is you're 12-8 in conference play if you go 6-2 the rest of the way. So that puts you in the top half of the conference standings. Not only that, but that gets you to 18 wins overall in the season. I think you'd be 18-13 overall if you go 6-2. Mm-hmm. But I think the important thing here is that 2 of those wins come against quad 1 or quad 2 teams. So if you can clean up at home, you beat Arizona, you beat Iowa State, I don't really know that it matters all that much what happens in Utah, as long as you can hold serve at home. If you win out at home, I think this team is in the tournament. I think the math actually starts to work out in your favor.
I don't know. For all the good things that we can look at, we have to look at the bad too, right? Like, there's some bad losses on this resume.
For sure.
This could be a moot conversation by any means, especially if, K-State kind of hits a speed bump in here. But, obviously 2 wins at home against quad 1 opponents is huge. It's attainable. I think that's the crazy part about it at this point, that there's excitement that this team could, potentially make a run in the back half here. And again, we have to remember the Big 12 tournament too. It is going to be vital for this team to finish in the top 8. You gotta put yourself in a situation where you can finish in the top 8, and give yourself a chance in the Big 12 tournament, but not playing on the first day.
Yeah.
Is going to be, I think, extremely important. So 6-2 would get you there for the most part, I would imagine. But I will be very interested if some of our predictions come true, we 6-2, this team goes 18-13 and maybe wins 2 games in the Big 12 tournament. If you win 2 games, that gets you to the semifinal, I think.
Yeah.
You get to the semifinal and lose. How this team would be perceived in the conversation because of how bad the non-conference was. But everyone, like, the Big 12 is not considered the best basketball conference this year. In the grand scheme of things, the SEC is considered the best basketball conference. And so do you look at recency? Is there a recency bias in it? Is there, there's all these little metrics that I'm sure they're going to look at, but it's going to be very interesting. And I hope that the conversation occurs, meaning we win these games and they have to put us in a conversation with the bubble, because it really then puts a just complete litmus test on non-conference scheduling. And, you schedule these bad teams. If the losses don't matter, you might as well be scheduling some better teams and, getting yourself, some name losses instead of Wichita State, LSU, some of these. So I don't know.
I think if you win out, it's not even a question, though. I mean, if you win out, you're a 20-win team at that point. You're 20-11. Your resume is going to be a lot better than
I
some of
mean,
those
if you win
bubble
out,
teams in the
saying
Big Ten.
we go 8-0.
Yeah. You're also the hottest team in college basketball at that point.
That's a 13-game win streak.
I know.
I don't
There's no
foresee
question.
that happening. But
There's no question at that point.
If this team was on a 13-game win streak, I mean, they win the last 8 games, then yeah, they're in. That's not even a question there.
No, not even a question.
But 6-2, I think it puts you in the conversation, and if it's losing at BYU and, losing at Cincinnati or something, I don't know. It's just crazy to me that we're having this conversation. We think about January, there are just so many games that this team, you win one of them, it changes the conversation just a little bit, winning at TCU, holding on at Baylor. I'm not even taking the non-conference schedule, in the equation, but some of these Big 12 games were, laying an egg in Stillwater. I mean, it's kind of incredulous, and you have to give a lot of props to everyone with this program, starting at the top. Jerome Tang has done a really good job of taking the criticism and worked, to get this team together to what I think a lot of us thought this team could be. I mean, I thought this team could finish in the top 4 in the Big 12 before we started the season, because I was picturing a lot of what this team is doing now. Coleman Hawkins, the Swiss Army knife. You have Doug
getting
McDaniel.
A double from Doug McDaniel.
Yeah, you have Doug McDaniel, who's taking a step up. I didn't even have Max Jones in this equation. Max Jones has really been a really incredible player for us, because he fits the mold of a guy of everything that we need. He doesn't have to be a scorer, but he's turning into a scorer. He's been a great defender.
And then you've got the core guy of David Gasson.
And you have David Gasson.
The only guy who's been around all 3 years. And he's, I feel like, reached the ceiling of his potential, what he can be as a college basketball player. And we're seeing it pretty consistently, game in and game out at this point.
I would have never called Big 12 or, David Gasson ever winning Big 12 Player of the Week.
Yeah.
And that's not a disrespect to David Gasson. I never thought he would be a guy that would be averaging 20 points, a game in 2 straight games. And, he's developed so much in his 3 years at K-State. And I have to believe that he's one of the main reasons how this team has come together too, because he just seems like a great teammate. He puts everything out there game after game. He's improved obviously on the offensive end, and he's been a really great defender. So it's crazy. I mean, it really is, to kind of see what this team has done from an improvement perspective. I'm not foreseeing an 8-game win streak. Maybe
neither am I, for the record. I was just throwing out there, if that happens, there's no way the committee could leave them.
Well, that would be 14-4, and I believe 14-4 would be top 4 in the conference, which would be radical.
That would be wild.
But it's all about tomorrow. Arizona's a 3.5-point favorite here, coming to Manhattan. I was going to try and make this game, but there's snowstorm apparently coming to Kansas, so I wasn't able to make that happen. But I hope it's an excellent crowd tomorrow. I'm sure it will be. And obviously I wish it was on national TV too, because, I feel like we've been playing, it's such a great clip with that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Absolutely. The last thing we're going to chat about tonight. So the women's basketball team comes off of a really interesting 2-game swing there, where you play an incredibly emotional but just defensive, grinded out matchup against the number 9 team in the country in TCU, who you were tied with in the conference standings going into that game. And you think going into that one, hey, this is kind of for all the marbles. And you win that game, and you stave them off of a 8-0 run to start off the fourth quarter, where they kind of regain control of that game. You come back from a timeout and you take back control, and you close out the victory against, Haley Van Lith, bronze medal winner in the 3-on-3 in Olympic women's basketball, and Sedona Prince, who got booed every time she had the ball in her hands, which great job by you and the rest of the Bramlage crowd for doing that. But you then go on the road to Stillwater, which has been a house of horrors for the basketball teams this season, apparently, in addition to our football team for the last 25 years. But you lose by 30 to the number 25 team in the country in Oklahoma State. And just, I thought it'd be a competitive game. I didn't think we were going to get steamrolled by Oklahoma State in that matchup. And the unfortunate thing about that game is it tipped off an hour in to the men's game. So it was really hard to keep tabs on both games, especially with the KU game being the primary rivalry for the men's basketball team. It was really hard. But Oklahoma State hit 12 threes in the first half alone, just really made it difficult to even allow K-State back into that game at any point when you have that commanding of a lead. So thoughts on that back-to-back, just, incredible effort against TCU and then just getting absolutely boat raced in Stillwater the next game.
Yeah. I mean, the TCU in a nutshell, I think the theme you could say is Serena Sundell in that game. She showed very much why she should be considered, a potential Big 12 Player of the Year candidate. The fourth quarter, she obviously just completely dominated in that fourth quarter. And a lot of it was due to TCU and not defending Serena Sundell very well, and K-State taking advantage of that on the offensive end by just having her back down in the paint and get in there and score. She's obviously, she's been such an important player for K-State for so long. And so it was great to kind of see her get her marbles, so to speak, after that type of game. The press, taking the Oklahoma State game notwithstanding, but the press really confused TCU in portions of this game. Haley Van Lith was obviously, as point guard, trying to dictate the offense, and K-State did a wonderful job, I feel like, on the defensive end for a good portion of that game. TCU had a few runs. They took a lead in the fourth quarter. But it was really on the offensive end. K-State, just really showed grit, getting some open shots and making those open shots. And then Serena really, really kind of took advantage. The Oklahoma State game, I saw a few highlights. I was obviously at the KU K-State game, so I could really only look at it from a statistics perspective. But Oklahoma State shot so well in that first half, and K-State shot so poorly in the first half that you were really in a position where by halftime, this thing is not happening today. I was worried about this game. I really was. Oklahoma State, they were in the top 25. They had beaten TCU at home already. I felt that this was going to be a letdown game for K-State. Maybe that's not fair to say, but that obviously happened. When you shoot 31% on the road, that is not a successful metric that's going to get you a win. Really, for the most part. The crazy thing, to also think about from a rebounding perspective, Oklahoma State out-rebounded us by 22 in that game, which, obviously we're missing a Yoka Lee. And, especially kind of later in the game, you're bringing in your best 3-point shooters, or, you're trying to get yourself in a position to try and just eke out, and try and get maybe a little bit of a mini run. But Oklahoma State, at one point was up 44 in this game. So in the grand scheme of things, I think what Jeff Mittie is going to look at is this is a write-off game. This is a game that, we as a team played horrifically for 40 minutes. We really didn't do anything well. Didn't shoot free throws well. Didn't shoot threes well. The press really didn't affect Oklahoma State that well. And so you're going to just kind of hit the reset button, and you're going to be hosting, I believe, UCF this week. Yeah. Or they go to Cincinnati and then they host UCF. So, you have a couple games that are going to allow you to just kind of hit a hard reset, get yourself in a position where, we hear Ioka Lee may be coming back by February 22nd for the KU game at home. That means in the next 3, you go to Cincinnati, who I don't believe is that great.
Middle of the pack, 6-6.
Middle 6-6 in the Big 12. UCF's not very good, but then you go on the road to West Virginia. West Virginia is a tough team with JJ Quinterly.
Yep.
So a lot of this, you obviously want to win the Big 12 championship, regular season championship, right? This team has the ability to do that, and we've seen it. We can't take this Oklahoma State loss as just a gigantic red flag. You think about the Colorado game. They went on the road and lost to Colorado. They came back and beat Iowa State at home. So I believe Jeff Mittie is going to get this team kind of put in a good position. Win the next two. You try and make a game at West Virginia. Try and steal one on the road, and then just kind of see where the end of the season takes you.
Yeah, you've got both K-State and TCU right now are tied with Baylor. All three with 10-2 records, and all three play Baylor. Well, TCU and K-State both play Baylor in this back half of the schedule here, these final 6 games of conference play. So you should have a determination on who that Big 12 champion is by the end of conference play, because you share both West Virginia and Baylor in these final 6 games with TCU. And let's not forget about Baylor too, who's ranked 25th in the country now in the most recent AP poll. I still don't get the voters, man. K-State beats TCU. TCU falls 2 spots to 11. You lose to Oklahoma State. You fall to 14th. I don't know. The whole thing, none of it makes sense to me, but
there's just not a lot of respect for the Big 12 anymore for basketball, for women's basketball. I really think the NCAA tournament is going to be kind of a prove it for the conference. If your top teams are able to get to the Sweet 16, that's big. If maybe a Baylor or West Virginia, who may not be hosting, can steal one of the regionals and get to the Sweet 16, but the conference just doesn't have a lot of respect right now. From a non-conference perspective, Utah beat Notre Dame. TCU had a big win, but from a K-State perspective, we lost to Duke. That's basically kind of the nutshell for us. So because of that, I also think Jeff Mittie's going to take a hard look at the non-conference scheduling for next season. Although you lose some good, you lose some of your best players, you're bringing in some good players as well. You have to build a resume that doesn't necessarily revolve around Big 12 conference play now.
Yeah.
Because of how the Big 12 is respected. So I wasn't surprised to see that we dropped, even though we beat TCU. I wasn't surprised to see TCU drop. A lot of it is just going to be how the NCAA tournament's going to look. Can you make it to the Sweet 16, the NCAA tournament? If you host a regional, it'll be very interesting to see how that all works out.
Yeah, we will have our eyes on it. We'll be chatting about it here. Quick, again, shameless plug for the watch along. It's going to be happening tomorrow night, 7:00 Central Time. You'll be able to listen in, watch along with Fireball Matt and the good chef Andre Napier tomorrow night as we take on the Arizona Wildcats, number 13 in the country. That'll be available on Twitter, formerly Twitter, I guess currently X, and playback.tv. So if you're not familiar with playback.tv, we've done some of these watch alongs in the past. Go to playback.tv/Cocaine Willie and you will find our room. It's super easy to create an account. You can create it with a Google account or whatever. It takes like 5 seconds to do that. So if you want to watch along there, Twitter, do whatever you want. We can't force you to do anything anyway. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Again, shout out to our sponsor, Annie Mae's Parlor, 616 North 12th Street, right in the heart of Aggieville. And be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Additionally, we are members of the College Huddle, the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. Check them out at College Huddle or thecollegehuddle.com. And finally, you can follow the show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or anywhere you can find good social media. And you can follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is somewhere putting children to bed. And Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Matt.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat country.
Let's
ride.